you may not want to hear this, but 40 years as in marriage, physically you change. There can be all kinds of things. There are changes after multiple children. There can be surgeries. There can be. I had thyroid cancer. My wife's had quite a number of surgeries for a number of different reasons. And every time the body's actually changed. I mean, sometimes literally changed, and so the whole physical experience was completely different. And so you relearn. You find new ways of giving pleasure, new ways of being intimate, new ways of just expressing your love. And whether or not the new way was quite as physically charged as the old way, doesn't matter. And so I have to say I'm a little. I can be a little cynical with people who say, I don't know if I'm going to get married until we know that we have the sexual chemistry. And I say, well, you're going to have to rework that sexual chemistry about 5 times, at least, in your marriage if you're going to stay together, because you change.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you keep, in light of 40 years, and people ask me after 30 years, how do you keep having sex with the same person and finding it still a life-giving and enjoyable act? And I think
you relearn it. But by the way, sometimes a doctor will say to you, you can't have sex until, it'll be several months because of the surgery. You can't do it. And so you still, and I know what they mean. What they mean is intercourse. They mean penetration. And I'll say, well, we're going to have sex. We'll figure it out. We'll find some way of being sexually intimate. I mean, you roll with the punches, and you find a way of doing it, and you do.
Tim,
on the one hand, I see people who see sex as just an appetite. Like lots of times you see in movies people saying, hey, how long has it been since you've had sex? You need to go out, because it's seen as a way of just fulfillment and joy and happiness, release. So it's seen as just a biological thing, actually. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you've got people who we would call prudes. So we would call them Victorians, people who think of sex as kind of dirty. Oddly enough, they also see sex as essentially a biological appetite, sort of a necessary evil in order to procreate the race. So it's Christianity that says, no, sex has always got to be connected to self-giving love.
And the way that connection is actually best understood in Christianity is through the term covenant renewal. We talked earlier about the covenant that God makes with us. I will be your God, and we will be his people. Mm-hmm. And that we mimic that in our covenant relationship in marriage. Well, in our relationship to God, there are times when we renew our covenant to him, we recommit ourselves, we have a worship experience of great power. In marriage, sex is the way that covenant renewal takes place, that bonding, that gluing, that feeling like we're made for each other. Even, you can read science now where they say, the oxytocin hormone is released and yada, yada, yada. That God, we've actually been hardwired by God for sex to make us feel committed to one another. And so having sex is a covenant renewal within marriage.
Yeah, and then even related to that, an even more lofty aspect of the Christian understanding of sex is that we understand sex as pointing to our eventual union with God, in which we have given ourselves, and therefore we belong completely to God, and God has given himself to us. That's the reason why we do say that sex should only be for marriage, because sex is not a way of being self-fulfilled or self-realization. It's a way of giving yourself completely to another person. It's a way of saying, I belong completely and exclusively to you, and you can only say that inside the covenant of marriage. Sam and Tara were very honest about their background, and they were moving in the direction of a sexual ethic, I thought, of the Christian sexual ethic. And yet, we know as Christians that because sex is not just a way of building up your identity, but a way of giving yourself to someone else, it's only ever for inside the covenant of marriage.
We have...
For the health of your marriage, what's its place in your marriage?
I think it's one of the great contributions to the marriage would be comedy relief. I think it's an overlooked purpose of sex.
Yes.
Many, many times my wife and I have said, boy, wouldn't people be absolutely regaled with hilarity if they had any idea of what we do?
Right.
So there we go.
Right, yeah.
Because we're laughing at ourselves.
That's right. In the movies, no one's underwear gets stuck on their leg. Right? It all magically disappears. Right.
But I think that's a shame. To me, that's a shame. Like, some of my favorite moments when we're having sex are when we laugh together, and when it's
not so serious
when it's not so sexy.
Most couples, at least in the counseling that I do with married couples, from time to time, people are expressing, or one of the issues of conflict is the dissatisfaction with their sex life. It's at a place where it's hard for them. It might have been easy for a season, but then it no longer is. Assuming this is true, at least to some degree for all of us, what have you all learned about the conflicts that you have over your sex life?